The following presentation is part of the Beyond the Blast Doors network.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Postcards from the Galaxy's Edge, and I'm really excited because tonight we are going to talk about all things Ahsoka Tano. So I want to give a warm welcome to my guest, Michelle Blahnik. Did I say it right?
You did!
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. There's nothing more in the world that I love than talking Ahsoka, talking Clone Wars, so I'm very excited.
Yeah, and one of the ways we got introduced was she was very gracious to be in a kind of, I don't know if it's a documentary I would call it, but just kind of like a, I don't know how to say it, or basically a lot of female content creators shared their moments that spoke to them in Star Wars, and yours was from, I think, the season 5 trailer of Clone Wars and all things Ahsoka Tano. So I'm really excited because I have a sad confession. I know of Ahsoka Tano from obviously following a lot of podcasts, and you know, I know a lot about her, but I have not seen a lot of the stuff, so I thought it'd be great to actually just kind of learn from you all about her, and especially now that we just got the end of her arc in the Clone Wars and things, I thought we could totally geek out and things.
Absolutely. No, I'm excited.
So just to start off, kind of introduce yourself and kind of just say where you are, like kind of what's your voice in the Star Wars fandom.
Thank you. So my name's Michelle, and I really got introduced to Star Wars with the Clone Wars series. I watched it when I was younger, and I was one of those people that the voice actress always talks about, those people that were enamored by the first lead female Jedi. I was one of those fans. And I just fell in and out of like keeping in touch with the series. But then, as I mentioned in my like moment that I shared for your documentary, when I saw that trailer for season 5, which was going to air, and it was at the time going to be the last season of the show, I was suddenly just reintroduced to Star Wars and all of the good, wonderful things about it. So yeah, so that's where I think I got mainly reintroduced to Star Wars, and then as over the years have gone by, I've really just explored all of it, watching all the movies again, and I grew up with the prequels too, so I always loved those, and just really digging into the community. As far as where I'm active most, I would say I'm mainly on Instagram. I run a fan account, and yeah, it started off with that I just wanted to like tell people that I really liked Ahsoka. That's what it was. It was me just, as silly as it is now, but it was sharing like photos and animation stills, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's so cool, whatever. And so then my love of Star Wars has really grown, and now I would say my focus is on all the animated shows. That's really where my like love lies for Star Wars, so that's kind of what I'm doing now.
Oh, perfect. And what is that Instagram so the listeners and viewers can follow?
Sure. It is the most it's the most basic name. It's Ahsoka X Tano. So her name with an X in the middle. And I tell you, it was very unoriginal, but it's like I'm not going to change it now. So it is representative of my roots of me coming into Star Wars because of this character. So yeah,
brilliant. Oh, well, thanks for sharing that. So if you are a first-time listener or viewer to this podcast, this is Postcards from the Galaxy's Edge, and every episode we broadcast from a different canon planet or moon. So Michelle, what planet did we choose tonight?
We picked Shili.
Nice. So I'm going to hand it over to Jerry, who is our canon junkie, who is going to tell us all about it.
Thanks, Shannon. If you like buildings that look like the heads of the people who live there, then get psyched, because we're broadcasting from lovely Shili. Located in the Shili system within the expansion region, Shili was the homeworld of the sentient Tortuga species. Because Shili had colorful grasslands, the natives displayed distinctive skin patterns for camouflaging. Jedi Master Shaak Ti and former Padawan Ahsoka Tano of the Jedi Order both hailed from this world. Shili was known to produce famously melodramatic holovids, One of the signs in Shili's zodiac system was called Ai. Its traits were wisdom, charisma, and exceptional virility. The constellation representing that sign was formed by blue dwarf stars. A being born under Ai also had the sign Jinri on Coruscant. Shili has one appearance in the Clone Wars and is mentioned in the canon novels Master and Apprentice, Ahsoka, and Leia, Princess of Alderaan. Shannon, back to you, Captain.
Thanks, Jerry. So what is it about Shili? I mean, it works out because obviously we're talking Ahsoka Tano, but is that planet ever kind of do we see that planet in the animated series, or do we just kind of hear about it? Like, I had to look it up. I was like, what is it?
Yeah, we see it very briefly. There is a flashback scene where we actually see little tiny Ahsoka, and if you end up watching this series, I don't want to necessarily spoil it, but there is a certain Jedi who finds her and brings her to the Jedi Temple. So that is the only time, as far as I'm aware, that we see Shili, but Togruta, which is her species, are on other planets, and we do see a couple of planets with the Togruta people. I'm thinking of one arc in particular in this series, but yeah.
Nice. It's funny that you mentioned the Togruta because, like, because I remember there was, like, I think a Togruta in, like, Attack of the Clones and briefly in Revenge of the Sith, and I actually thought that was the same character because it's a very distinctive look, and then I was like, oh, no, this is just a different kind of species and things. I was like, oh, they're really unique looking and things, and I was just like, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
And things. Let's kind of break it down and then like talk about the character of Ahsoka, because from what I understand, hearing various people maybe who are a bit older in the fandom, because I'm also so glad to have you on here because you were a kid when the prequels came out, when I was a kid when like the special editions came out, so there was like just a slight age gap there, so it's cool just to talk to someone who really appreciated the prequels, because I know sometimes they get a lot of the hate sometimes. I think there's now that your generation is now kind of in their mid-20s and things like that, we're now getting this new voice, which I think is exciting, but it's kind of like hey, that's our Star Wars, we grew up with that. But from what I understand, though, Ahsoka Tano at first really didn't go down well with fans. Like, kind of walk me through it a little bit.
Yeah, so she got the nickname Snips from Anakin because she had a snippy attitude. She was spunky. She just kind of said whatever she wanted, and she was enthusiastic. And I mean, when we meet her right out of the gate, both Anakin and Obi-Wan are like almost like, oh my god, like who is this child? And to be honest with you, I was one of those people that at first thought she was very annoying, and then I soon had this love-hate relationship with her. But now, as I've grown, I actually really appreciate how much of a kid she really was. She was 14 when she got assigned to be Anakin's Padawan. I was obnoxious when I was 14. Like,
I think honestly, we all were.
Exactly. So one of the things I just love and what I value so much with the Clone Wars and the way that you can tell a story in television form is that we got to see her grow up. But I don't ever want to discount who she was in the beginning, because she was a kid and it was special to see, and she was funny and witty. She had so much enthusiasm. I think that's even a line she says, like, I'm the one with the enthusiasm and you're gonna teach me or something. Like, she says some line to Anakin, and yeah, now I really appreciate that, because so much of Star Wars is for kids, and it's about seeing kids want to see themselves in the stories that they're loving and enjoying. And I saw a lot of myself in her. I had an enthusiasm to just go out into the world and absorb everything. When I got into the Clone Wars, like formally and really like just went all in on the Star Wars fandom, I was 14, I think. So now I'm 22, and so all these years have passed, and so she was hated at first, but now people have grown to love her.
And kind of to bounce on that, where do you think was the moment that it kind of swapped, or it transitioned to where all of a sudden people were like, hang on a second, this character is something and not just Snips and Sky Guy. Like, this is actually a really viable character. Where do you, for you, or, and you know, kind of in the fandom, like, when was that moment that it all changed?
There is an episode in the middle of season 3 where all the characters get a design update, Ahsoka included. So she's no longer wearing the like tube top from her first couple seasons. But that episode in particular is honestly one of my favorites. It's called Heroes on Both Sides. And to give a quick summary, Ahsoka ends up visiting a separatist planet with Padme. And the moral of that story is that there are heroes on both sides. War is not black and white. And I think, honestly, as far as the Clone Wars storytelling, that was the point where you start to dig into some of the more serious topics. Always in some of the other arcs, there have been really important conversations, such as, like, there was one episode where these really peaceful lemur-looking people didn't want the Jedi to bring their war to their planet, right? Like, we could dive into the early episodes of the Clone Wars and find those important, deeper themes. But for me personally, and I think for most people, when we started to see that not only shift in animation, but shift in, like, here are these overarching stories that we're going to tell in the course of a couple episodes, not just one or two, like, let's have a story arc. That's when we started to see her grow up a little bit, and take on more responsibility in leading a group, or you know, really being tested in her, like, Jedi abilities. So that's what I would say. I would say right around the middle of the show, I think.
That's really fascinating, because again, as someone who doesn't know anything about the show, that also is just kind of having faith in your audience too, that you can kind of go, okay, we're now going to go with some deeper themes, and maybe that's why it also now resonates with people who were adults too, because it's not just, oh, it's that, you know, that kid Star Wars-y show. Like, there's moments where you're like, oh, this is pretty, not dark, I don't want to say dark, but like more adult, basically, kind of themes. So speaking of which, we have to talk about Ahsoka leaving the Jedi Order.
Oh my gosh.
Now, this I did watch because I was, when I was getting kind of the B-roll footage, and I think her name's the lady from Forced Toast, which I'm sorry, I think it's Lindsay. I'm so sorry, but she was talking about Ahsoka Tano as well. She shared that moment with you, and they were talking about her leaving the Jedi Order, and it's very interesting because, again, as someone who doesn't know the whole story arc or whatever, I'm seeing there are so many parallels in Star Wars. I mean, we already knew this, but Anakin with, like, it's like a necklace or something. Just talk me through it. Like, what's happened, you know, that scene, and then after. Yeah.
So throughout the arc, she basically gets framed for bombing the Jedi Temple. And she essentially goes on the run in an effort to prove her innocence. And Anakin does a little bit of digging. She's in the middle of her trial with the Republic, so something to keep in mind is that because there wasn't enough evidence yet to support that she didn't do it, she gets expelled from the Jedi Order. Anakin is not on the council, so he doesn't have a decision, so you see Mace Windu, Yoda, Obi-Wan, Ki-Adi-Mundi, I don't think I said his name right. You see all the Jedi masters, and you just see them basically expel her. It's heartbreaking. So in the last, I would say, the last episode, you see Anakin kind of go on this wild goose chase to find out what happened, the truth. And so he ends up running into Ventress, and that's a whole other part of the episode arc. But in the end, she is proven innocent, and a different Jedi is revealed as the true bomber of the temple, which is so interesting. I'm not going to get into it too much, but that really speaks to the fact that the Jedi have lost their way. What the fallen Jedi speaks to, we as the audience know that it's true because you look at the course of the movies and see, the Jedi have fallen from their ideals and as being peacekeepers and people that care and all these things. So basically, the end of the episode is Anakin offering Ahsoka to come back. So what he offers her is her little, like, essentially the equivalent of a Padawan braid for her because she doesn't have hair. It's her Ahsoka beads, I think. Yeah. So he offers them to her, and that's when she says, "I'm not coming back." The tears start coming. We all start crying. The music swells.
Oh my god, the music!
Yeah.
Yeah, I think his name's Kevin Geiner is the composer.
God. He is a
wow. Yeah. Like I know I'm
He's
very
brilliant.
late to the party, but. Yeah, it's like, okay. So correct me if I'm wrong. After that, we don't, until as of a month ago, 2 months ago, we don't hear from Ahsoka in the Rebels, or not Rebels, excuse me, in the Clone Wars arc kind of thing. So that's the last time we see her, correct? Before we had this new season that just premiered.
In person. I don't know how much more I want to say, because I think... yeah, we don't see her in person. There's only one small moment where we get like a reference essentially to her. But otherwise, she doesn't really appear in an actual arc and adventure until this new season.
Sure. Well, let's dive into the new season because I'm dying to hear what you had to say. What did you think? Do you feel it was done sorry, I'm gonna try that again. Do you think she was done well and the justice was served?
I do. I think I would say the 8 episodes that she was in, including the arc before the Siege of Mandalore, which was people have kind of dubbed like the Ahsoka walkabout arc. Before we knew that we were getting this final season, we were actually given so much concept art and an understanding of what these episodes were to be, if they thought that they would get the chance to finish them. So we actually kind of knew generally what to expect. So the Ahsoka walkabout arc and Siege of Mandalore, the best, I would say they were the best. It's like emotional. They were just some of the best arcs, the best storytelling I've seen in Star Wars, genuinely. I loved it. I think I don't know how much you've kept tabs. The walkabout arc was really important, and for certain reasons, people didn't enjoy it, but I thought it was amazing. I thought it was important to show, since, to your point, we haven't seen Ahsoka since she left the Jedi Order. Where is she at now? What is her mindset? What does she think about the Jedi and the Republic? And that gets questioned once she sees real people and how the war and the Jedi falling short of their true mission and goal, how that affects them. So that arc was wonderful, and then of course we got into the finale. Stunning. It was emotional.
Can we just talk about that Darth Maul fight scene?
Yes, it's exactly where I was about to go. Yeah.
Oh my god. And the motion capture, because my background, my day job is visual effects, so I know about motion capture and things. So I could tell that was Ray Park, because the way he he does this leg motion where he kind of almost bounces at her, and I was like, that's Ray Park. But forgive me, I don't remember the stunt woman's name, but she does this move where she's on her knees and does a circle and she holds the lightsabers in an inverted hand form instead of this. I mean, the girl is badass. I knew Ahsoka was, because I have a lot of friends, and hearing from you and things like that. But I confess I'd only watched the Siege of Mandalore arc just because I've been busy, and it's one of those, what can I watch that I don't need to know a lot back? So it's I know who the characters are, I kind of know what's going on, and things like that. So that was just even had me going, so I can only imagine you were.
Well, what's funny is I remember Dave Filoni's been doing a lot of interviews and press and stuff for this final season, and I remember him saying somewhere that he felt the Siege of Mandalore should be a story that anyone can watch. For the Clone Wars fans that have watched the show from beginning to end 3 times or whatever, obviously we're gonna feel that connection to it. But as you said, I think he purposefully made it so that anyone could watch it and enjoy the story. And it has all those layers of okay, the fight, cool, but we also know that it has a deeper meaning, because Ahsoka is in that moment wrestling with, is Darth Maul right? Oh no. And she, fatefully, wrongfully believes in Anakin. And so we see her defending what she thinks is still that part of him that's still there. So yeah, the fight was amazing. I watched it like a million times because it was so cool.
Well, I mean, I wasn't expecting her to say yes, because think about it. Again, echoes in Star Wars. We've seen now 4 shots of a hand reaching out. We've got Darth Vader, we've got Kylo Ren, you know, we got Anakin, and then we have Darth Vader. So I mean, or Darth Maul, but it's so technically Anakin twice. But you know what I mean, like. And so I'm like, oh no, homegirl's gonna say no, and she says yes, and you can even see it on Darth Maul's face where he's like, wait, what? What?
Yeah.
You agree with me? But I do find it fascinating that when the glass broke, before we saw the next episode, everyone thought that's when Mace Windu and, you know, and the other round across the universe kind of thing happened. But then we kind of see him in the next episode, so obviously that wasn't but that would have been a very cool moment, but it's a shame. And I was just like, because at first I was like, oh my god, but then I was like, oh wait, no, because then he's in the hollow table the next day or the next episode. But so I was very fascinated, and I loved it. I mean, it had me, because I was watching it like 7 a.m. right before work started, and I was just like, oh, she said yes. But then was like, then she obviously was kind of like, well, no, Anakin, I don't believe you kind of thing. So it's just like, oh no. But as an audience, because that's that tragic, we know the truth, and that's what's also good storytelling. It's like you're going, no, don't do it, and of course the characters are blind to it, kind of thing. So
so good.
And then so how about when the Order 66? Let's talk about Order 66.
Heartbreaking. Heartbreaking on another level. I think they did such a good job showing the impact of Order 66, how it affected Rex and Ahsoka personally. Like, you know, in the movie we saw just one by one all of the Jedi dying and the music swelling and quick shots and all this stuff. So now instead we see both of them struggling, like, oh my god, we don't want to kill them. They don't have any free will. They don't know what they're doing. And Rex, oh my god. Just heartbreaking. Those are his brothers. And they just did such a wonderful job with it. And of course, at the end, to honor them, you know, oh my god, I have never cried so much. I truly haven't.
I loved the deep cut to Rogue One. I loved when she started doing. I call it the Force mantra. I don't know if it has an actual name, but I mean, sometimes I'll say that when I'm like cycling through London and I'm like, oh god, I don't want to get killed. But I just literally was sitting there because of course I'm watching it quietly. My other half is still in bed, so I'm just going. Yes! Oh my god! And it just, but it worked. It worked. It didn't just feel like a shoe-in to be like, hey, here's a nod to Rogue One. Like, it felt purposeful and things. And I mean, it was also really touching that they had the helmets that were her markings and things. I was secretly hoping we'd get that skin in Battlefront 2, but I guess we're not. But and those ending shots were absolutely cinematic. Like, even had me just like, the composition and everything. I mean, it was just like, wow, this is not just an animated kids show. Like, this is really, it's Star Wars. I mean, not that it never is, but it's just one of those, like you said, Dave Filoni did it perfectly for someone like me who doesn't know anything about a lot of the smaller story arcs. I can literally pop in and watch the last 3 episodes and I totally get it and I'm totally involved and just sold. So it was quite something. I don't think it had as much of the emotional impact, but it still had quite a bit. Like, I knew her and Rex were very close, kind of thing. Because now we're going to kind of transition into Rebels.
Sure.
And her appearance in Rebels, because again, Lindsay from Force Toast talked about where she came down, and do we know why she calls herself Fulcrum?
We do. It's a code name. Right. So that she doesn't reveal her true identity as a Jedi and as Ahsoka Tano. It's a way for her to help the rebellion. And of course, like, the fun tidbit that we find out is that she got the name Fulcrum from Anakin, because they added that bit in the Clone Wars where when she is first trying to contact them at the beginning of the Siege Mandalore arc, they think it's Saw because Anakin has created this secret code name and like communications channel, the Fulcrum channel. Oh, it's so cool. So,
do you know what the definition of Fulcrum is?
I do. It is it's a physics term, but as far as I remember, it is like the point at which change occurs, or like when you're talking about balance, it's the center point of when things are balanced or something like along those lines.
Exactly, yeah. It's a thing that plays a central or essential role in an activity, event, or situation. So I knew it had to be something like that because I'm high school physics from like 2002, but I was like, I know this term, but I was like, I just wanted to look it up now. I was like, there's gotta be, that's a very specific word. So I figured you knew, but I was like, oh, what's the actual definition of fulcrum? So it's even more perfect. So anyway, continue. Sorry.
So basically throughout the first season of Rebels, she's not around. We only have whispers of this mysterious agent called Fulcrum, and I'm not going to get too into it because there's a lot of like just all the nonsense that fans went through in order to actually figure out. People guessed ahead of time that it was her, based off of cues like in the show. And then there was one point where I think it might have been another podcast, somebody altered the audio of like the Fulcrum agent. So the actual show and the production team altered Ashley's voice in order to make her sound like, or her voice was lower or just sound different so that people couldn't trace that it was her. Well, people did the reverse. And basically people were able to like really like 90% sure that it was her, that Fulcrum was her. So the season 1 finale comes. When I tell you that I got up off the couch and started like yelling, I'm dead serious. I started crying like a baby. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And because she comes dash, basically you hear her voice before you physically see her in the finale, and it was mind blowing. So yeah, that moment was probably one of my favorite moments in Star Wars. Because keep in mind, at that point, the last time we had actually seen her was season 5 when she was leaving. So all these years went by. Actually, not all these years. It's dramatic. Probably like a couple. It was enough where it was like, that's a lot of time.
Well, yeah. Exactly. And like, I think like what Lindsay from Force Toast was saying was it also now combined these animated series that these characters, this is all a bigger universe. They're all crossed together kind of thing. So that made me appreciate it too, because I was like, because I knew I'm going to ask you in a second, what's the symbolism of like the bird or the owl, because that was at the end of the most recent episode. But I was just like, okay, now this is all making sense, because and she had that hood with the staff kind of thing. I was like, oh, okay, I'm seeing we're now even tying it more. So obviously it's again one of those, what sequence do you play things, because the payoff is now going to be completely different for someone who hasn't seen it at all. They're not going to have that like, oh my God, that's Ahsoka Tano in Rebels. But so yeah, because I'm a little kind of TV animated show illiterate. What is the deal with like the bird? It looks like an owl, but I don't know if it's an owl. But like, what's going on?
How much do you want me to tell you? Because
you can spoil me.
Yeah,
go for it.
Sure. Well, all right. So the bird, or the convor, is what they give the name to the bird. It actually is. I think it is an owl. It's just like the Star Wars side owl. It's like the little cats and the tukas. So the owl, her name is Morai. We do get to meet her in Rebels, or I guess she gets named in Rebels. And one of the things I love about Star Wars is how there are certain things that remain mysterious. So to be honest with you, we don't know a lot about Morai, and that's awesome. We just know that she happens to be around, I think, in either reference to Ahsoka or Ahsoka's will, or just something along those lines. Morai maybe appears when Ahsoka's around, or sometimes if she's not around, it's more like, I don't know, I saw a tweet the other day that really cracked me up. I'm not gonna, basically somebody was saying, oh, Morai exists to remind Anakin that he effed up, and I thought that was so funny. But that's kind of true. That bird has been around twice now. Once when we see Vader at the end of the series, and then Morai's hanging around Vader in Rebels at one point too. So, and then we see her again in a different point. So I think Morai is just a friend of Ahsoka. I think people have theories about her deeper meanings, but that goes back to like Clone Wars stuff that you haven't watched yet. So that'll be fun for you to dig into.
As kind of like an outsider, I'm very massively a fan, and I love Greek mythology. Yes. And you mentioning Morai? Mm-hmm. Yeah. and it being like an owl very much made me think of Athena.
Yeah.
You know, because she has, I think it's Ojo Ubu. I'm gonna have to look it up and I have to edit it in, but. You know, and like in Jason and the Argonauts has this mechanical owl, and then this owl is also Athena's symbol and things. And actually, I'm just now, literally right as we're speaking, kind of seeing some of the parallels of Athena and Ahsoka and things like that. So that's kind of my, like, coming completely fresh, don't know anything about the kind of the deeper stuff, but I see very much an Athena kind of goddess of war and wisdom kind of mixed in there. So...
Yeah,
could be
I love
a little
it.
bit of that too. So,
I love it.
And then I think finally we see her. I know because again I've seen the clips.
Yeah, they're kind of unavoidable,
her,
right?
with the world between worlds and Ezra. Like what, she saves him or something? Like is that like current hurt? Like explain it to a complete dummy here. Don't worry about spoiling anything because again, most of the stuff I know about all the big reveals. So yeah.
So basically as far as setup goes, Ezra and his ghost crew are really trying to figure out like what is on Lothal that is so important to the Empire, and they find out that it is this portal to the world between worlds. So at one point Ezra goes in, and the funny thing is, on the topic of Morai, he sees Morai hanging out by the portal entrance, and this is before we like know that Ahsoka's gonna come back. So he enters, and I don't know how familiar you are with the world between worlds, but it's kind of like this void, but he was able to save her by pulling her out of the moment in time when she's fighting Vader. So it is kind of like a time travel thing. So he goes in, he's like, oh my god, that's Morai, hey, and he even vocalizes like, you're always around when Ahsoka's around. So then he's looking at this triangular, triangles, big thing too in Star Wars. He sees this triangle portal, and he's like, okay. So he's looking at it, and suddenly he sees Ahsoka fighting Vader, and just on instinct he like grabs her shoulder and pulls her through. So before like the temple collapses and Vader's supposedly gonna kill her. So then she's like, oh my god, what day is it? Like, where am I? And she finds out that, this is a season and a half from, like, later than when we last saw Ahsoka. So all this time's gone by. And the moment itself is a big learning moment for Ezra. It's very parallel to literally what she was just doing, fighting Vader, trying to save Anakin, if you will. She encourages Ezra to not selfishly like save Kanan. And he basically has to watch Kanan die again, which is that's heartbreaking.
That is heartbreaking.
But he watches, and so she's like, you can't save your master. I couldn't save mine either. You have to learn to let go. Kanan's last act, his oh god,
I know this
lesson was about sacrifice and self-sacrifice to save the ones you love. So so that's what that was all about. And honestly, I think it is such an interesting conversation about people theorizing that maybe the world between worlds can be used to bring other characters that have passed on back to life. And as much as I would like to see certain characters that are dead come back to life, the moral and the lesson about the world between worlds is that you cannot do that. He saved Ahsoka, perhaps because she has a bigger purpose later on, and we none of us have known that story yet. With the ending, the way that Rebels ended, so we haven't seen that story yet. So that's the world between worlds. It's pretty awesome. Yeah.
No, I definitely, I've read about world between worlds. Obviously it's used in quite a lot of fan fiction, which that's completely fair. I think fan fiction actually is a great place to kind of get those alternate universe stories and ideas out. Like, I know some people are like, ugh, but it's like, just let people, there's nothing harmless in it, let it create. But I know kind of some characters you're mentioning, but again, it also then it kind of null and voids their sacrifice, and then it's like it cheapens it almost. So so I know what you mean. So I thought maybe the last thing we could kind of chat about before we wrap up is so that's all the animated series. Now about a month ago there was all this rumor and speculation about Ahsoka coming to The Mandalorian.
Yes.
And being in live action. And I really am dying to know kind of your take on it. no holds barred, just be completely honest, and just kind of, what do you think?
Yeah.
You know, how, you know, the speculated way they're going about it,
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah. It's so hard, right? My first instinct is, if it's not on StarWars.com, it's not legit.
Yeah.
However, I'm not a journalist, and I do know that reporters work really hard to get scoops, to have exclusives, and I'm not sure how, honestly, I wasn't completely able to keep up with which sources were reporting this news themselves or reiterating what other sources had reported. So my first instinct was, in fact, to just be like, oh, it's another one of those rumors. Because to be honest with you, it had been teased before.
Yes.
Ahsoka being in The Mandalorian, Ahsoka being in live action, all these different rumors are like Anakin or Hayden coming back as Anakin, or like the rumor
that always
about
goes
Obi-Wan,
around.
right? The Obi-Wan series or movie and Ewan McGregor. That, oh my god, I think that was around for years, right? So my first instinct was to be, okay, whatever. But it gained so much traction that I felt like I was unable to ignore it. So now my thoughts.
That was a good intro.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I love her, and I will always love her, but I am not thrilled about her being in The Mandalorian. Mando is Mando. That show exists, and that's why, so one of the reasons I love Rebels is because it is focused around a brand new set of characters. I love the Ghost Crew. They are all each their own individual character. They each get beautiful story arcs. So they've already set that up with The Mandalorian. They don't need to bring in a, quote, legacy character like Ahsoka. And that is coming from someone who loves her to death. I don't want to see her in there because she's going to overshadow them. My hope is, if she is in fact going to be in the show, and honestly, because it's Dave doing the show, I think he'll do it right. I have full faith in him. Like, Ahsoka's his baby. So he's gonna, if she is, I hope and I expect that he will make it a brief thing. Like a 5-minute scene, a cameo, a reference, anything like that. Because at the end of the day, The Mandalorian is not the Ahsoka show, it's The Mandalorian. I've read that people think that's a setup for her to get her own live action. I don't know how I feel about that. She's been so special to be in animation for so long, but she is such a beloved character that I can see why they would want to make a live action show with her, because she is so popular, and that would be something that people would want to watch, myself included. Honestly, I would watch a show with her in it, you know. So that's, I guess, my thoughts. Yeah.
No, that's a really, this is why I wanted to hear that, because you and I talked offline when it first broke, and I was like, oh, I'm dying to hear about this. But no, that's a very good point. And for me, I don't mind little nods if they're earned.
Yes.
So, because I mean, obviously, with the reveal of the Darksaber at the end, even I was losing
so
my
cool.
even I was losing my mind, kind of thing. But so I understand. So obviously, we have to, like, how did he get it from Bo-Katan? Like, but and again, I only know that because I listen to a lot of podcasters. But I like what you said. It's The Mandalorian. So, I mean, it would be great if it's literally just kind of a walk, a nod, I don't know, just something, you know, that, I don't know. Maybe if she even explains what the Force is to the Mandalorian.
Yeah, that would make sense, right? If she's able to provide any insight, because they don't know what Baby Yoda, I call him Baby Yoda, they don't know what he is. They don't. What's interesting to me is that none of them do know what the Force is.
Yeah,
even though
just
we're not that far from. But then, oh no, see, just talking now, I remembered. Really, we feel like everybody in the world should know what the Force is, but in the lore of the original trilogy, the only people using the Force are like Luke and
Vader.
Yeah, Luke and Vader and his little squad. They are knowledgeable of the Force, but the rest of the galaxy is all like, oh, the Jedi were wiped out years and years ago. So now that I'm saying that, I'm like, no, it actually makes sense that they don't know what it is. I do think it would be great. That would be an easy way to get her in there, but she can't stay for too long.
No.
Which also speaks to her journey as far as time period goes. She should be currently looking for Ezra with Sabine at that time. Yeah. So there would be no reason for her to stick around. Maybe she'll run into him and be like, oh, you have a child. You have a Force-sensitive child. Here's what I can do to help, and then be off. That would be really cool.
Because, when Rebels ends, is that after Return of the Jedi? Or Is it? Okay.
Yeah. The
Okay.
epilogue for Rebels basically goes past the original trilogy.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Gotcha.
yeah,
Because
but
I know they,
pretty much lines
because like,
up.
I know Lando comes in, I know Leia comes in, and things like that. I know we kind of see Luke briefly because we see Obi-Wan and Darth Maul fight kind of thing. So that's why I was like, I know we're definitely very close in that timeline, but I wasn't sure how close kind of thing. So yeah, like I'm all for it, but I also know I think less is more, because also if you don't have Ashley Eckstein in there as the voice, like, I think Rosario Dawson, if that's all, if we're going with the rumor and the speculation and things, that's cool. That makes sense. But then it's like, don't have her speak. Because if you... No. Yeah. I know it sounds really bad because she's a brilliant actress, but you're going to really divide a fandom here. I mean, that's already happening where people are like, oh, no, she's perfect. Well, no, Ashley Eckstein should have been doing it. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's really weird just like how all the PR kind of happened. You know what I think? I don't think she's in season 2. I think she is possibly in season 3, because they're right now doing like the scripts and things, but the way because I mean, I really don't think, this is purely speculation now, I really don't think Dave Filoni is gonna like cold shoulder Ashley and go, oh yeah, you know that character that everyone identifies with you with, you know, you have a clothing brand, everything, we're not even gonna talk to you about it, we're gonna I think it's not gonna be a season 2 thing. Again, like I'll probably be eating my words in October, November time. We'll see, but I don't think it's a season 2 thing. I think it'll be, if it is going to happen, a season 3. But I don't know, because I really trust in Jon Favreau as well, being on a couple projects of his, that he really is passionate, and get him and Dave, like the minute they announced those two together, I was like, that is a dream team. Yes. So. Yeah, they're definitely more of a less is more kind of thing. So I genuinely hope, you know, it's like that, like a scene explaining what the Force is, because I do think it's really cool to live in a story arc in a galaxy where people don't even know what it's called. They don't know it's called the Force. They're just like, what do you mean he lifted a mud horn, this tiny thing? I mean, I'm scared. Apparently we find out what his name is in season 2, so I'm scared to find out what Baby Yoda is actually called, like, because that's what you said, to your point about sometimes mystery is a good thing. So, because sometimes we have all our fan theories. It's kind of that same concept of seeing the monster. Sometimes the more scarier movies or whatever are when you don't see the monster, because it's all up here. When you kind of give it to the audience, then all of a sudden you're like, oh. So I'm definitely with you on that. But
that's what makes it so cool, is that all the characters are in awe when this child is doing those things. So I almost wonder if that would ruin the mystique of the show if they did decide to have someone come in and explain what the Force is, you know? We'll see. We'll find out in October.
Hey, maybe it might even be a flashback. Maybe it's something as simple as a flashback with Bo-Katan, because isn't her and Bo-Katan together at the end? Or no, she's supposed to be looking for Ezra.
Yeah, so Bo actually is going to remain on Mandalore.
Right, okay.
There's a arc in Rebels where Sabine actually picks up the Darksaber from Maul's lair on Dathomir, right? Because the last time that in the Clone Wars we see the Darksabers with Maul, he doesn't use it in Siege, but he has it still. So at one point the Ghost crew comes into contact with Maul, and then that's how she gets the Darksaber, and then she ends up giving it to Bo-Katan. So
okay.
So yeah, there is a gap of time where we don't know how Bo-Katan lost the Darksaber to Moff Gideon. Hopefully she didn't die. She probably did, if he's as ruthless as we've been.
Is it wrong that I want it, like she didn't like have it just taken from her, like she is like kind of like out of my dead cold hand? And
well,
like,
I think that's totally to her character, like style. So yeah, I mean, she probably went down a true hero.
So maybe that's it too. Maybe we see kind of just a flashback, so we see Bo and Ahsoka in live action, but then that's it. We don't have to see. I think it just blew your mind.
So
but you know what I mean? Because then everybody's happy. It's like, great, they're there, but it's not taking away. But that is our speculation tonight.
Yeah, right?
We'll see what happens. Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Tell the listeners and viewers where they can find you.
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram at Ahsoka Tano, and my Twitter handle is just my name, Michelle Blahnik. Yeah, that's about it.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I've been so excited. I've really enjoyed kind of geeking out and kind of just being schooled in all things Ahsoka Tano. So great. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and we will see you guys next time.